Hey everyone, I'm Rather Incoherent, and today I wanted to predict what I view as the most powerful cards going into the Drowned City. Now, before I get into my exact power rankings of cards, because that's going to be so fucking speculative, I'm not even saying like specifically the best cards in order, I'm just saying the cards that I personally think will be very powerful and I'll see the most use out of. I do want to show some honorable mentions for cards that either don't quite make the list or are just super cool cards that I don't think are going to be super powerful cards. And while my list is supposed to be the cards that I perceive as the 10 most powerful cards going into the expansion, despite the fact I think Gatling Gun is tied with Flamethrower as the best big gun, I don't think it's one of the most powerful cards of the expansion, and that's pretty much just entirely because a big gun that is this expensive doesn't really fit cleanly into a dirty fighting rogue. That basically means it's either for Michael or for Tony, and with Michael I'm afraid of single big gun strategies because of confiscation, so it's really for Tony. And as Tony, do I really think this is moving the dial compared to Switchblade and a million actions? No, he already killed everyone. He'll kill everyone with Gatling Gun. It's good, but it's not going in a top 10 list for me. And it's good, but it's not going to move the needle as Antikythera in a nutshell. This is transparently great, but as a 5 experience Seeker card, transparently great's the floor. You can't do any less than that. You can play this and have a great time with it, but it's not going to be particularly powerful compared to the top end of Seeker stuff. Maybe deserving to be on my top 10 is Dial of Ancients, Signs of Cataclysm, the one that allows you to seal the autofail, because you can make decks that seal the autofail forever, and yeah, that's obviously broken, but frankly I just view it as so boring I don't want to give it a spot on my top 10 out of principle, and I really don't know where removing the autofail from the game ranks. Maybe it deserves to be number 1, I personally find it so boring I don't know if I'll ever play it. Now, moving on from stuff that's really powerful and might have deserved a spot on the list, I want to talk about some things that are just really interesting, and I like that they exist, but I really have no expectation of them being the strongest things in the set. Number 1 on that list is the Book of War. I think this is far and away going to be at its best in Marion, and everyone else might have a hard time justifying doing this, especially with the 4 resource cost. But Book of War is a really, really strong thing. It's pretty much the only recursion engine available to Guardians in general. It opens up a lot of interesting stuff, really looking forward to seeing the card. And sort of similar but far less flashy is Crowbar, allowing you to investigate with Fist. Of all my honorable mentions, I think Crowbar is probably the weakest of the lot, but it opens up a lot of things, and I feel like it deserves to get shouted out at the start of the list, if nothing else. Ready for Anything and True Awakening are both cards that I expect to play a lot, possibly more than the top 10 list I'm about to give. Both of these cards are very low investment draw cards with additional upside, and those are the sorts of things that I love putting in my decks, that I personally put as many as I can into all of my decks. I proxied both of these when they got previewed in a Lily Chen deck, and it feels really good playing a Guardian that has 4 extra draw cards in the deck. It makes the game so much smoother, it makes it so much easier and more reliable to find what you're looking for. While I don't think True Awakening is particularly insane, I don't think Ready for Anything is particularly insane. So generally speaking, while I don't think these are like super flashy, they're both just cheap draw 2 effects with a little bit of extra upside. Any deck that can run these probably won't be made worse by adding them, and when you reach a critical mass of draw, your deck becomes super consistent and powerful, and I will probably be playing the absolute shit out of both of these cards. And lastly, I'm going to mention Transfiguration, because, it's gonna do something. I don't know what. There's a lot of different things you can cook with Transfiguration. There are so many interesting possibilities open to building with this card, but dear God, it's so hard to predict the actual power level of the card. So that'll conclude my list of honorable mentions. Good cards that don't make the cut, and super interesting cards that are good enough to get played, or staple cards for my playstyle, but really don't strike me as the most powerful things in this set. It's possible there are gonna be like S-tier Transfiguration decks, I wouldn't be surprised at all, but I don't really think this is going to be like the craziest thing you can do. I think it's just going to be effective and cool as hell. Coming to my number 10 spot, probably one of the more controversial picks on this list is String Along. I saw a lot of people really unhappy with String Along. Being a 3-cost asset that gives your enemies alert when you try to trip them and then doesn't disengage them, like, it's not intuitively good. But I've played enough pickpocketing characters, enough characters that wanted to evade but had bad foot, and by bad I mean 4 + 1 is 5, and that beats 3 by 2, and suddenly I'm spending my whole turn tripping a guy because I can't beat the -3 I keep drawing. And this +1 skill value is worth a lot. I love draw cards. This seems like it's going to have a permanent home in any deck that runs pickpocketing. It seems very, very good to me, and it seems like a piece that's been missing, which is to say, better draw, more reliability, and more reliability with the skill value for that pickpocketing archetype where you try to put a single enemy on farm and just keep him with you and keep stealing from him and use that to fund everything else you're doing. For my number 9 spot, we have Cosmic Relation. This is Seeker's best knockoff of Ever Vigilant level 4. You get player numbers of play actions or draw actions across your team. And sure, Ever Vigilant 4 is going to give out 4 action plus resources, which is better than this, but it's also 3 more experience than this is. And this has the flexibility of being able to use for drawing if no one needs to play something. It's just a rock solid support card that, as long as you're playing with more than 2 players, I think will probably just improve almost any Seeker deck. Because Seekers are so good at their role, they really should be branching out to supporting their teammates. Anyone who is already playing support Seeker automatically picks this, but I think most Seekers can probably justify just picking this up with a spare experience at some point and be perfectly happy with the time spent doing it. I think this is just a strong enough support card that every Seeker looks at it, and it's incredibly good. Coming down to number 8, a card I initially thought I'd be putting a lot higher when I was picking out cards for this list, Memories of Another Life. 5 experience is just a lot of experience. Artist, Believer, Dreamer, Sorcerer. I'm not entirely sure who the list that gets this card is, but it doesn't matter. I don't care who's committing this, because the effect of just playing any card that costs 0 experience is universally good, right? You can play Thorough Inquiry, or Bank Job, or Dynamite Blast. If you need an ally slot because you just killed your guy for Soak, Leo DeLuca, you can use Shortcut if you just need an action right now on somebody else. Whatever you use this for on everyone is valuable. I'm sure there's some really huge shit where you get like a level 0 card that's not available to your character normally. But generally speaking, the reason this is so strong is because it's unexpected Jurage, where if you succeed, you either cast Bank Job or Thorough Inquiry, whichever your team needs more. And yeah, that's really good. It's kind of insane, but at the same time, the fact it costs 5 experience and its best uses are for card draw and resources, which, you know, your team can build to have those things handled already. It's a brilliant support card. It's great action compression. It might deserve to be a lot higher than 7th on the list, or sorry, 8th. But at the same time, it's just 5 experience. It's not going to be a priority upgrade. That's the thing, right? This is something I'm not going to be getting early in campaigns. Sure, it'll be insane when I play it, but at scenario 2, I'm probably not dropping my entire first scenario on 1 copy of Memories of Another Life. And that's the major issue. Just 5 experience for a sort of off-kilter effect like this that's not directly funding a game plan. It's not pushing your ability to get clues or fight people. It's just giving you a lot of resource and a lot of compression. It's great, but I'm probably not buying it until I have at least 20 experience in the deck already. And the fact that I won't be using it for the whole campaign is holding it down a lot. Also, the fact I can auto-fail and not get 10 resources does kind of suck. For my number 7 spot, we have Robert Castaigne. Still no idea how that's pronounced. He is a very, very powerful ally. First of all, if you're fighting with Fist, +1 Fist is great, so great is standard. 3 calls for this ally is actually dirt cheap, it's kind of weird. And his ability is essentially gain 2 actions. Reveal a firearm from your hand, use it, then play it. That's a ton of action compression. He's not higher in the list only because he specifically works in small gun spam rogue, right? You have to be running a ton of small guns to reliably get value out of this guy. I'm not including the Luger or the Remington in this list, and it's largely because most of what's powerful about that archetype to me seems to be coming out of Robert and not so much of those cards. This is sort of a stand-in for all of them. I considered having Luger be at like 10 on the list instead of String Me Along or have it in the honorable mentions, but I think of the small guns archetype that is largely shipped out with Michael, Robert level 4 is the thing that is the centerpiece of that archetype, the really strong source of action compression and reliability that makes the deck a menace. Coming in at number 6, we have Eyes of the Dreamer. I won't be including Breath of the Deep on this list, the fight equivalent of this card, but this card to me seems like it's going to be staple in part because of another card I'll cover later in this list. The fact that it is just power creeping 6th Sense, which was a playable card that was perfectly fine previously, at least 6th Sense level 0, is really solid. It allows you to investigate head with the book just like 6th Sense an unlimited number of times. Revealing the chaos tokens by spending the 9 charges is very much not the way you want to use this. You want to use this as a battery of charges. You have 9 charges to spend on other effects. Or alternatively, if you're taking a very important test, you want to spend 1 charge to reveal 1 additional token to not pick an autofail and guarantee a success on, say, Enraptured level 2, which probably deserved an honorable mention, won't be showing up in this list. Very good new card. But Eyes of the Dreamer allows you to investigate with head, unlimited, allows you to investigate with head, guaranteed no autofail up to 9 times, and allows you to spend up to 9 charges on other effects on your other cards. This feels like it might just be a Mystic staple going forward. Because Eyes of the Dreamer and Breath of the Deep are only small increments, 1 token at a time, 1 clue, 1 damage, it's likely you'll see them more in dedicated decks, with Eyes of the Dreamer being run alongside things like Rite of Seeking Clairvoyance, or Breath of the Deep being run alongside things like Shriveling and Azure Flame. If you put them both together, it sort of locks you into like a Dragon Pole flex or a Sign Magic flex, and that's fine, but it does like get much more setup heavy, because otherwise you're playing a lot of setup assets to do things 1 increment at a time, and it's kind of low tempo. I think you'll see these less in a flex deck unless it's that sort of Sign Magic deck, and more as the 3rd spell that does the thing in dedicated role decks. But they're very good in that regard, great at killing rats and acolytes, great at finding odd increments of clues, and great at giving you charges to fuel other effects, and we'll get into why that's so important in a few more cards. Coming in at number 5, we have Nautical Charts. Nautical Charts is to discard what Mariner's Compass is to Dark Horse. And Mariner's Compass is rock solid. I don't know if you've seen anybody recently play like a full tempo Mariner's Compass and Daryl or Min, but that card is incredibly strong. And there's not a lot of incentive to play Dark Horse. I've seen Dark Horse decks where Mariner's Compass was the only Dark Horse card because the rest of the archetype really didn't offer much that mattered. It's just like a little bit of skill bumps, so who cares? There are far more incentives that are far more compelling to run a discard archetype with Nautical Charts than a Mariner's Compass. Nautical Charts is also just turn over turn a way to get an extra clue. I think Mariner's Compass would probably have come in at a similar spot if I were ranking Mariner's Compass as a new card. Nautical Charts is only not being ranked higher because I'm reining in my hype about the discard archetype, but frankly, number 5 might be underrating it because it is deduction every single turn, provided you have cards to discard. And in a Nautical Charts deck, when you're running the discard archetype, that's hardly a cost at all. Going into card number 4, we have Gift of Nodens. When I first reviewed Gift of Nodens, I said I didn't quite think there was enough going on with Survivor Skills to justify running Gift of Nodens. That the main thing Survivor Skills did, and Survivor Skills are great, but the main thing it did was get more draw. And getting draw to get more draw to get more draw, it's like using Farsight to play Deep Knowledge, right? If you're using your draw engine to draw cards, we're just going in circles here. You need cards like Brute Force, you need cards like Sharp Vision, and you need at least like 4 of them that contribute directly to your roll, so you reliably get value that does something out of Gift of Nodens every turn. The draw is helpful, it ensures that you never run out of steam and you can keep fueling the Gift of Nodens, but it's not the whole point. And for me, the reason Gift of Nodens gets to be a functional card and gets to be all the way up at number 4 on this list is because of Contemplative. With the addition of Red Deduction, now you have access to that and Sharp Vision, and suddenly any survivor can throw in Gift of Nodens to have insane draw if they're looking for consistency for a certain card in their deck, but any clue-based survivor has 4 copies of Deduction in the deck, and suddenly the ability to recycle those skills is incredibly valuable, and there is a very good reason to be running Gift of Nodens. Speaking of Contemplative though, Red Deduction is the number 3 on the list. Not only is it just like the reason I think that you have the critical mass of proactively valuable skills that is required for Gift of Nodens to be worth 5 experience, it's also going to be in your starting deck, and it's Red Deduction. Deduction's an incredible card. I don't really feel the need to go on at length about this one. This is just transparently incredible, so I'll move on. Coming in at number 2, we have Spectral Shield. It is a 1-cost fast event, costs basically nothing to put in your deck. And the downside of this card is that you must use it when able. Whenever you take any amount of damage or horror, you must cancel 1 of it, and you do that by removing a charge from an asset you control. And that is a big cost. You can't choose not to pay it if you're able to pay it, and then once you're out, it discards. But the bigger issue is like if you run this in a deck from last year and make no other changes, it just eats your Rite of Seeking, and that's not a good rate. You're making your deck worse. But in the new expansion with stuff like Eyes of the Dreamer, then you have so many charges to use this on. You're not going to take 9 instances of damage or horror in most scenarios. And in fact, if you did, it would probably have killed you, so this card would be the reason you're still alive. So combine it with the new assets giving you the charges to fuel this basically forever, and it's a 1-cost, 0 experience fast event that makes you borderline immortal. That's kind of wild. Additionally, there are some other characters that can do their own thing to make this basically unlimited. The number one example is a Norman with Library Pass and the new level 2 Enraptured can just like put enough charges on a Rite of Seeking that it may as well be unlimited, and then suddenly Spectral Shield is viable for them too. And speaking of that Library Pass, a Library Pass level 5 is my number 1 card for the expansion. When Library Pass level, I believe 1 was revealed, I said, this is not that good. Sure, it's broken if you loop Necronomicon, but if you do anything else, having to draw the Library Pass, having to spend the resource to put the thing into play, it takes a lot of draw, it takes a lot of resources. Most tomes aren't that much better looped. Is it worth it to use it to get Scroll of Secrets to loop the thing? Like, how much value are you really getting for all of the draw and all of the resources going into the combo? There's a lot of problems with Library Pass 1 that make it a good card but unexceptional, and outside of Necronomicon, not broken. Library Pass level 5 is a permanence. It no longer costs a resource to put the tome into play. So we've removed the draw and resource limitations on Library Pass level 1. Now you can just play your tomes without spending any resources. And sure, if it's still doing something at the end of the round, you lose a resource. You saved more than that by using the Library Pass. This is just kind of a fucking insane value engine in any deck with multiple tome cards. It's inherently incredible. It's a ton of tempo because you're saving resources. It's a ton of tempo because you're saving play actions. It is so much power because of just how freely you're able to use your now basically unlimited cards, right? You can use Scroll of Secrets to guarantee you draw 3 copies of a Cryptic Grimoire, not Cryptic Grimoire, Grim Memoir that don't cost play actions or resources, right? It's kind of wild just how strong this is and how little it takes to enable it now that it's a permanent that starts in play and costs no resources. It's kind of hard for me to imagine any deck built around Library Pass level 5 that's not absolutely cracked. And again, just like level 1 would be broken if you built your deck around looping specifically Necronomicon, now you can just throw in a Necronomicon to an already powerful archetype. That's basically my whole issue with Scavenging Men is, yeah, scavenging the Necronomicon's incredibly broken, but it costs a lot of resources and it costs a lot of cards, and you have to set it all up, and there's a lot of XP that goes into it, and the individual pieces are not that insane. Library Pass is not a 5 experience combo piece. It's just an incredibly strong 5 experience that happens to loop the Necronomicon once you pick it up later. Anyways, that'll be all for now. If you think I'm severely underrating or overrating something, I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear what other people are hyped about that I'm overlooking, or what people feel I've severely misevaluated. I have one idea as to something that might get immediately called out. I think I'm uniquely high on String Along, and I'm worried that means I'm just off my fucking rocker. But for now, I'm done. I've been rather incoherent, so thank you for your time. If you made it this far, then please do hit all the buttons below for the algorithm. It really does help the channel grow, really do appreciate it. And before I go, a massive thank you to everyone supporting this channel, both over on Patreon as patrons and here on YouTube as channel members. I'll see all of you in the next one.